Is there any chance in hell when this thing's all said and done, Kevin Durant could retire a Golden State Warrior, matching his timeline with Steph Curry and doing somewhat of a victory lap? It's clear Steve Kerr loved coaching him. I think it's pretty clear to say Steph Curry would welcome him back. Hell, I think Draymond Green even would. Now, with the fans, that's up for you to decide. But I brought Ben Garcia of Locked On Suns on the show today as our Wild Wild West tour continues, and I asked him what it would take for Kevin Durant to somehow end up in a Warriors jersey. Let's just put it this way, everyone. So you're telling me there's a chance on today's Locked On Dubs.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is the good word, everyone? Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen of every day. A lot of ways you can tune into the show. YouTube, what's good, everyone? Thumbs up, subscribe. We appreciate it at all times. And then we're also free and available wherever you get your audio podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google. You can find us there. Today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. My name's Charlie Walter, formerly of KPIX, CBS News Bay Area, and 95.7 The Game in San Francisco, which is the flagship station for the Golden State Warriors. On today's show, we continue our Wild Wild West tour. This is where, leading up to the season, when we've hit the September doldrums, we go around the league to as many teams as possible and learn about their squad from their eyes. We ask about hypothetical trades from their eyes with no bias whatsoever. And today's brought us to Phoenix, which is very enticing. Granted, I forgot to ask him about Nas Little, who is actually the only current player connected to the Warriors that has any tie to the Suns. So sorry about that one. But at the end of the day, Nas Little's probably not going to make a difference for this team. You know who could potentially make a difference? Kevin Durant. Is there any chance that could happen? Do the Phoenix Suns have a floor this season, a low floor? What's their ceiling? We debate that, and we also get his takes on why Steph Curry should be traded from the Golden State Warriors. How dare he? Here's the conversation. It's Benjamin Garcia. You can catch him on Locked On Suns. But this worked out perfectly because Steve Kerr was recently on the Dan Le Batard show talking about Kevin Durant. And I mean, the door is, until Kevin Durant retires or the Golden State Warriors just do not have the assets and the financial flexibility, or Kevin Durant claims he's retiring somewhere, whatever it may be, we're always going to at least entertain it, especially during the September doldrums. But Kerr said this. He said, those years were incredible. I loved coaching Kevin. I think the last year he was here, it was visible that he wanted to move on. We could feel it. That was obviously his choice as a free agent, but everything he gave to us, brought to us, we'll be thankful for that forever. So now the question becomes, could you ever seeing it making sense from the Phoenix Suns side with where they stand currently?
You have the right guy on your show today, that's for sure. I like to see myself as a Phoenix Suns. I like to be honest. I'm not a fan first. I'm honest. And that's where I like to kind of steer things. When the Suns lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round, I was fire and brimstone. I was all right, guys, you're going to have to get rid of Kevin Durant while he still has that trade value. You got to think about Booker. I don't want to do it, but just think of it. Just see what's out there. Just see what's out there. Because this team, it is now or never. I mean, I'm sure later on in the show you'll say, who's got a brighter future? It's not close. It's the Warriors. But right now, the Suns are clearly better. The Kevin Durant thing, you mentioned, it wasn't great when he left Golden State. Where did Kevin Durant leave and it wasn't completely messy? He left Oklahoma City and there was a soap opera for Russell Westbrook for a straight year. Brooklyn, he demanded a trade and in the middle of the night left, literally. And then with the Golden State Warriors as well. Yeah, he was arguing with Draymond Green. I mean, Kevin Durant, I have been pretty critical of Kevin Durant, not the player. He's magnificent. It's always been the emotional aspect. I mean, the show I'm on in the morning, The Drive with Jody Ayler, Kevin Durant was messaging this guy for a full day, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Has he came at you yet? I mean, I would love for a show to pop off and go viral. So Kevin,
he has not came off on
Garcia. Tag
yeah,
Twitter.
He hasn't came off on me yet. It will happen. That's how confident I am sometimes with Kevin Durant. But no, the door is not closed for Durant to head back to the Warriors. The door is not closed for Durant to pack up and retire right now and go play in Thailand. The guy marches to the beat of his own drum. He's a career wanderer. I love that he's on the Suns. I think he's a superbly talented guy. But I think we got more than we bargained for here in Phoenix. I love that he's here. He's still an elite player. He's still a one on a championship winning team. But I think if you ask a lot of Suns fans, would you go back in time and redo that trade? A lot of them would say yes. I'm not on that train. But if it doesn't work out this year, or if the Suns in the middle of February, closer to the trade deadline, and they're the 6th seed in the West and it's still not clicking and Coach Bud didn't figure it out, I'm very optimistic this year, but I have to be honest, that could happen. Yeah, absolutely. He could be traded off to the Warriors. He could be traded off to the Rockets. We saw that earlier this year, that there was speculation of that. Yeah, the Kevin Durant thing is without a shadow of a doubt, he could go literally anywhere, and that's including the Warriors. And the Draymond thing, he'll be fine. It's not something that I'm worried about at all.
Yeah, that's bygones.
Mm-hmm.
So with you covering the team and watching them every game, I like to think that you have a sense of what the Suns' direction is if this thing blows up, because they're not trading Kevin Durant if the team's a legitimate contender, right? They were 49-33 a year ago. The way that they went out makes you think that, if it just gets a little bit ugly early, they have to start exploring things. We've heard behind the scenes that they're not blowing anything up, that they're confident in this core, but they can't keep it together forever. It's just an impossibility at some point if you're not a contender. Ricky Bobby said it best. If you're not first, you are literally last. Sometimes you got to peel off the damn Band-Aid. And so with that being said, from your perspective, what would it take?
Yeah. So I'm not crazy. I'm not this Suns fan. I'm not a fanboy on Twitter trying to trade Nusuf Nurkic for Walker Kessler. That stuff's not going to happen. That's insanity. Kevin Durant, can you get back some of the draft capital that you gave up? And I understand, it's still not great, because if you're giving away Kevin Durant, guess what? Draft picks probably not going to be very good, but it's ammunition. It swings at the bat. You're not getting Brendan Pajemski. Could a Kuminga come back? I don't know. That's a guy as well that just has contract concerns. That's just something where you don't know what you have in him. Exactly. You have to pay him. You don't know, and the Suns would do that because they pay. But
here's the thing. If Kuminga started popping off halfway through the year, and all of a sudden the Suns say, "Hey, can we get Kuminga in a first?" The Warriors are going to say, "No, F off.
Not a chance.
Why would you do that trade?" The only way that it would happen is if it happened literally today, to where the Suns are like, "All right, we're pivoting. Let's bring in Kuminga. He's a little bit of a gamble, because if he no longer becomes a gamble, I don't see why the Warriors would get rid of him, at 21 years of age, and bring in 36-year-old Kevin Durant, who is still a really good player. Don't get me wrong. It just doesn't make sense from that aspect. So it does seem like draft capital would be the most likely scenario. And the Warriors do have plenty of it. How many would it take? 2 firsts?
Man, I don't know. That is so subjective, because right now, I think you'd have to give up 4 first-round picks or 3 first-round picks. But if you wait till the deadline and the Suns are spiraling, you're just trying to get out of the business and hit the eject button and get anything you can. So if it's not working out and the Warriors say, "Hey, we'll take him off your hands. We'll take that contract off your hands. We'll throw in a player or two, whoever it may be. And here's a couple of first-round picks, a couple of seconds. Here you go. Go away." That could happen too. Now, the Suns aren't trading Kevin Durant anytime soon, and I don't want them to. At the end of the season, I was fire and brimstone. They fire Frank Vogel. They get extremely lucky and somehow land Tyus Jones. Monte Morris is exactly what they need as a backup point guard. I'm very optimistic on the Suns this year. Do I think they're going to win a championship? It's so hard because only one team does, and you have to get a little lucky, and injury concerns aren't going away for this team. But I am still optimistic with the vibes being as high as they have been coming off of the Olympics, dealing with the Tyus Jones thing I had said, and I'm really bullish on Mike Budenholzer. When I tell you Frank Vogel is over his skis, he was over his skis. What I would be curious by is why the Golden State Warriors would want to get back in the Kevin Durant business. You won 2 championships.
Because, dude,
You don't need him.
It's just superstar talk. That's the thing. I'm more wait and see mode. Let's give the Warriors half the year before they really decide which direction they're taking this thing in. But there's no doubt they're at least flirting around the star names. And let's get real. Lauri Markkanen, not that type of star name. And he also made a little more sense, right? He's a rising star. He makes a little more sense than bringing in another dinosaur that's 36, 37 years old that's going to be out of the league here soon. But then you can make the claim, all right, if you have Steph Curry for 3 more years, if you could find a way to lock up Durant for that same exact window, you could kind of maybe finish what they started. Is it a dangerous game to be a revisionist and go back into the past and try to make that work all over again? Hell yeah, it is. But everything is kind of a dangerous game in the NBA, right? You really don't know. But them going after Paul George and being in talks for Jimmy Butler and saying that, Karl Anthony Towns is one of their targets they've been, looking at for years, it sounds like. And also Giannis. We've heard reports now that he's kind of their unicorn. Like, they're clearly fixated on bringing in another dog next to Steph Curry, someone that fits their win now timeline. And Kevin Durant, if all it took was draft capital, that may make sense if you're trying to keep in line your next generation and bridge a gap with Podziemski for sure. I mean, Kuminga, you may not have the money to do so if you're keeping Andrew Wiggins on the roster, but I don't think the Warriors would necessarily entertain it. But I think whenever the name Kevin Durant has a chance to be on the market, he's going to be tied to the Golden State Warriors until the day that he retires, just because it's kind of the fun thing. But nothing is happening in terms of the Phoenix Suns trading him away if the team is good. Coming up, the conversation continues on the Phoenix Suns. How good can they be? What's their ceiling? What is their floor? We'll discuss next. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, and it's because it's America's number one sportsbook. And right now, we have a little something different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5. And this is going quickly, so get in on the action now. $5, you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. All good there. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's number one sportsbook. While we're on the topic of the Phoenix Suns, the over-under for them is set at 47.5 this season. I'm going to go ahead and say take the under on that. I'm going to go against what Benjamin said. He said the Suns are bouncing back. I'm saying take the under and visit FanDuel.com to place it. America's number one sportsbook. We know ceilings. What realistically is their floor?
The Suns' floor, I mean, just got to be honest. It could be missing the playoffs. And here's why. It's just injuries. Yusuf Nurkic, the anomaly last year, played like 72 games. This guy didn't do that, didn't play 70-plus games for, I think it was 4 seasons prior to that. So asking Yusuf Nurkic to be healthy again and that healthy, Kevin Durant was very healthy. Bradley Beal wasn't, so that leads me to believe he probably is going to be up and down again. Injuries can derail this team very quickly. Now, luckily for them, they are deeper this year, which is something that they just didn't have. Tyus Jones, Monty Morris, Mason Plumlee as the backup 2 is just uber levels ahead of Drew Eubanks of what they had last year. But this team, if guys go down simultaneously, like a Beal and a Durant for an extended period of time, I love Devin Booker. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it through a large stretch of games without it. So this team truly is. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs. But if you're just talking about their floor, I mean, even just their realistic floor, a play-in team, and then all the way up to a championship team. Because whenever you have 2 of what I believe is the top 12 to 15 players in the NBA, and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and we talked about this earlier today on Locked On Suns with my buddy Brandon Clean. I don't know if there's a duo better just on paper between Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. So the ceiling is championship, but the floor, because they're kind of brittle, could be as low as the play-in. And if it's really bad, it could be missing the playoffs altogether. I don't think it's going to happen, but could be what it happened. This team fluctuates on a day in, night out basis. It's crazy, man.
If they're trending towards that direction and trending towards a potential 500 season around the deadline, do you believe that the front office would not balk and they're sticking this thing out as long as they possibly can? Or could they rip that Band-Aid off and have a sort of fire sale where it's like, all right, we're picking one of these three to lead us into the next generation, and we're going to trade, an asset or two assets for capital, for maybe a young player in return too that we can then extend? Like, how do you think they would go about it?
Charlie, so I do a 4-hour radio show every day. I'm the executive producer on it, but I end up filling in a lot, especially during the wintertime. February, when the Super Bowl's over, he's taking the week off. I'm filling in. I promise you, if they're under 500 or they're 500, I will be shouting to the greater Phoenix area in the studio that I'm in right now and be telling everyone, fire sale this team while you still have the chance. Because the future for this team is incredibly bleak. And if you don't figure it out, you could be left to dry and left out for everyone else. And it'd be half decade full of just dysfunction and missing the playoffs. I will be touting that drum very loudly and to everyone. I don't think Matt Ishbia is going to do it, man. There's something about Matt Ishbia, the new owner of the Phoenix Suns, who's been there for about a year. I love the guy because he's so much better than what Robert Sarver was, which was a cheap owner and overall, probably just a terrible person. There's a lot of things I could tell you about Robert Sarver off the air. Probably couldn't tell you on the air. And having Matt Ishbia is such a breath of fresh air. He won't do it, man. He is hell-bent on winning a championship come hell or high water. He is going to do everything to win a championship with this core. He will go baroque doing it. He's already paying 2 head coaches. He's paying Monty Williams. He's paying Frank Vogel. And now he's going to pay this guy. Like, he'll do anything. And aggressive wins in sports, but there's a difference between being aggressive and being reckless. And I love Ishbia, but sometimes he can be a bit reckless.
Yeah, keeping the thing together if the team wasn't any good, that seems to me like it's a little bit reckless. Like
Charlie,
I always look at it from baseball perspective, man. Like the teams that don't, like, look at the Angels a couple of years ago. Remember with Shohei? They're just like, no, we're going to ride this thing out. And then they just sucked the rest of the year. They got nothing for one of the greatest assets in trade market history. And it's just like, what in the hell are you guys doing? I guess I equate that to kind of like the Phoenix Suns, maybe a little bit differently because it's more of a 2-year window, right, than a 1. But if they're not even close, then it's like, what flexibility do they have in the offseason to make it so much better that they're going to catch up to all these other teams in the West?
Yeah. Just so we're on the Shohei Ohtani thing, I was also on the air screaming to the masses, Diamondbacks trade for Shohei Ohtani. And if they would have done that last year, maybe they actually win the World Series and not losing it. But yeah, no, it's the Matt Ishbia thing. It's just, I after they lost. Okay, here's what the analogy that I keep using for the Suns. I used it on the air. I used it on Locked On Suns, and it was very plainly this: the Phoenix Suns told us at the beginning of the year they were a student in a class, and they told us they're going to get an A in math. They're going to ace it, and then they came home at the end of the semester and got an F. They didn't even pass the class. If the Suns would have lost in the Western Conference Finals this year, or the Western Conference semifinals, and it was really competitive, it matters how you lose, you'd be like, all right, it's a pass. Next year, let's really try to figure it out. You got to get an A. They didn't win a single playoff game. And then Matt Ishbia, a couple of days later, had a press conference who went from, we're going to win a championship to, oh man, we won 49 games, guys. Did you guys know that's one less game than 50? We're 1 game away from 50 wins. That's what it was. And so is the ability to just change the narrative with this team, it can drive you a little crazy. Matt Ishbia is a young owner. He's still figuring it out. He has so much equity with me because he's willing to put his money where his mouth is. And Robert Sarver would have never done that. So he's still learning. But this team, man, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. That is truly what it is with this Suns team.
Coming up, the conversation gets a little audacious on Benjamin's part. He tells me why the Golden State Warriors should trade Steph Curry as soon as possible. Plug your ears, Warriors fans. That's coming up next. Keep this in mind anytime you're going to a live event in the future. Doesn't matter what it is, a sports game, if you like a concert, if you like comedy shows, theater, whatever it may be, use Gametime to help you out. It's good stuff, folks. Some of the features you'll get, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if it's not the lowest price. That's their lowest price guarantee that they pride themselves on. Also, customer service is huge, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Not only that, the closer you get to your event, the cheaper the tickets get. For all the procrastinators out there, Gametime's the best. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Let me ask you this. I put this out there on social media. I was doing a show here at Fox, and I usually break out a segment. I broke out this segment. Why don't the Warriors, shield your ears, Warriors fans, why don't you guys cut your losses? In my opinion, I just don't think they're going to compete anytime soon for a championship. Can you imagine the haul you'd get for Steph Curry? Can you imagine the haul you would get for Steph Curry? 4 first-round picks, 3 pick swaps, whatever young player you want. You could immediately.
We're not listening.
You could reset your franchise. You already got 4 championships out of the guy. Why not? And I understand you're not trading Steph Curry unless he tells you he's okay with it. That I totally agree with. You're doing the same thing with Devin Booker. Why? Why? I mean, if I was in your guys' shoes and I'd won 4 championships with Devin Booker and Devin Booker was anywhere near the player Steph Curry was, I'd be like, guys, we can get 4 championships and reset our franchise. What are we doing? Is it just pride? Or am I just the crazy lunatic local sports talk host who pissed off 40,000 fans or however crazy it was on my social media, and you guys just won't even think about it?
I think Joe Lacob still thinks his team can win. I mean, he said it the entire offseason. I mean, granted, what else is he going to say? This team kind of sucks. D'Anthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield. They're bridging a gap towards it. That's the biggest thing, is they still think they can win with Steph Curry as, if not their catalyst, one of their catalysts. Like I mentioned the name Giannis earlier. They seriously believe, probably behind the scenes, that if he were ever to become available, until they trade a bunch of their assets, they're as in good a position as anyone, because players would probably want to come play with Steph Curry, play for a Hall of Fame coach.
Of course.
It's Steve Kerr. A. B. It's just, it's A, B, C, D, E, F. It's everything. The Warriors do have like a lot of really nice tradable assets, man. All the picks intact. Kuminga, Podziemski, Moody.
Well, I would
you could trade them all. Wiggins.
I'd keep Kuminga. I'd obviously keep Podziemski. I can't believe even for a second his name was thrown out in conversations for Larry Markkinen, but the Warriors shut that down. Good on them. But could you imagine what you would get for Draymond Green and Steph Curry?
Yeah, but then who's your
franchise right away?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking to reset it with. Are you going draft capital, though? Or are you getting just some young up-and-coming stars? I mean, you could take your pick, right? You could kind of
if it's Steph Curry, choose. You walk in there and you just grab the players you want and leave Steph Curry there. And they don't even
can't do him like that, though. After he signed a contract, I mean, maybe
he has to approve
months ago, but it's too difficult, A, to do that, and B, there are just so few names in sports that have stuck with one team through the tail of time. And the fact that they still have like a ceiling. They do have like a ceiling. I mean, they clearly have like a floor that's like, all right, this thing may be really busted, But when you have a 21-year-old and Jonathan Kuminga that's already a good player and is right around that age where he can get a lot better, and he does have, a skill set that you would think with all the talent he has can improve if he just gets a better understanding of the game. And that's teachable, right? That happens from time to time, gets a better jump shot. All of a sudden it's like, wow, Kuminga's a stud. Brandon Bajemski, I already think's a stud. I mean, he was all rookie team last year. For his age, he's fine. He's a really good player. Some Warriors fans will say he's a really good role player. I think he's just a really solid basketball player that's going to put up 16, 8, 7 for a long time.
He's a really good role player right now, but he can evolve into much more. I mean, Devin Booker was a really good role player at one point. Players change, players get better. So yeah, it's premature to call him just a role player. I love Brandon Bajemski.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it from the fact that this roster is not complete. I don't think it looks the same way in April, and if it does, it's because they just struck out. It has nothing to do with planning, right? It would have to do with executing. They've already planned a potential Paul George trade. They've planned the Lowry Markkanen trade. All of a sudden, the name Jimmy Butler's getting brought up. Like, they are going to surround Steph Curry, or at least attempt to surround Steph Curry with some players that can get the job done, whether it's the youth that develops internally or whether they do wait and see. They see that these guys aren't going to be ready for their current timeline, and they ship them all out for that one player that comes in and gives them a shot here. But they've already made their bed, like, there's no point in discussing something that's not going to happen because Curry is, unless things go really awry.
All right. Well, then, Warriors fans, I apologize. And
there are plenty out there that would say genius decision. I mean, if you just took off the blinders as a fan as a whole and said, all right, where the Warriors stand right now, if they believe in their youth, which they clearly do because they haven't traded them away, what would make more sense in the long term if they're not going to win a championship this year? And it's to get guys that are right on the cusp and trade away your superstar to do so. But there's just a lot of layers to the onion here. And they're pretty, you don't have to peel them far back. Like, it's a transparent onion. You can see through it and why the Golden State Warriors aren't trading this guy away. Like, they're trying to get him to a number, which is 5, that is unheard of in this game. It's been heard of by just a few. To win an NBA championship, it would take a bunch of things. And it's, I think, a little egregious right now to sit here and say the Warriors are going to be this or going to be that. I think there's such a question mark. I think you could point to their floor and you could be like, this team is not going to be any better than last year. But to point at their ceiling, it's so tough because, like I said, with Cowherd making the Ben Simmons comparisons and all this and all that, it's easy in retrospect to say this is going to happen or that's going to happen. But who would have thought that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, would turn into the player that he is, and then those young draft picks in Oklahoma City would be the picks that they are, and they hit on just about every single one, and things just come together at the right time. Now, the Warriors would have to, take a bunch of different things. One, it would have to take Andrew Wiggins getting back to a really good level, and he's been dealing with a lot in his life, obviously, and you would hope that he comes in with a real sense of pride this year to put the past couple of seasons, or I guess past season, because he was good a few years ago when he was on the floor, put last season behind him, get back to form. It would require that. It would require Kuminga being an elite player, like one of the really good young players in the game of basketball. It would require Bajemski being close to an all-star, things that probably aren't going to happen, especially this quickly, right? But again, you never freaking know. Everyone thinks they know, right? You could sit here with 100% certainty and say, I 1,000% know, but then it doesn't happen. And, you try to scrub it off the internet. Like, that happens from time to time. I sat in a studio with people, 4 games in, that said Brock Purdy sucked and that this was all just a magical Jeremy Lin type moment.
You don't want to get me started on Brock Purdy. That's a locked on 49ers take that I'm ready to have whenever you're ready. And Kyler Murray. And I don't know how you watch Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy and think you'd rather have Brock Purdy, but that's it. We'll go on a different tangent one of these days.
All right, Benjamin, good stuff. Any final thoughts for me on the Golden State Warriors? Let's get you. What's the over under on the Suns right now? I want to get your opinion on whether we're hitting the over or under.
I'd have to look at it. I think before they lowered it, I believe it was 46.5 last time I saw, it was absolutely lower because Brendan and I were arguing about it and why this team's over-under was so low. As I'm opening up my FanDuel Sports app and doing two things at once, and I try to find it, but if I'm just aiming at the 46 and a half, I'm taking the over on the Suns. I mean, I'm just expecting them with cohesion, chemistry, a head coach that knows what he's doing, that they should absolutely be better than they were last season. Does that mean a championship? I'm skeptical of that. Does it mean better than they were last year? I'm bullish on that.
46 and a half. The unofficial, very unofficial. What are we at?
Oh, I was going to say, I thought you had looked it up and I was right.
No. I said the unofficial, but Benjamin's saying that anything at 49 and a half, that's his number. Anything under 49 and a half, you
wait a second. Here we go. 47 and a half. So same thing. Yes,
okay.
I would take 40.
So
I would take the over on 47 and a half.
He's taking
in
the
fact,
over. Sounds like
82-0 probably. So
good stuff. All right, Benjamin Garcia, you could catch him Monday through Friday, Locked On Suns. And hopefully there's some good battles this year, man, and we can get a little cameo session. I'll come over there, talk to some of those fans in Phoenix, and you
talk down to us because you're better than us.
No, I would just say maybe tell their fans that they should trade everything away. Maybe bring out.
No, you don't want
Charles
that.
Barkley from retirement, trade him away too to get a few assets in, like whatever we can do.
I'm hearing we could still get a couple of second-round picks for Nash. So.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we could throw in Amari Stoudemire too, and Sean Marion, who people.
We're not doing Sean. We're not doing Sean. That's my guy.
Too far.
Everyone
Locked On Warriors, Monday through Friday. We've started. Season's almost here. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Peace.